All right, guys, welcome back to the Torch of Liberty. Our last episode was just on a review of the screening of the Birthright film here in Spokane. And even then, I'm sure, like, from that video, no words can really express how grateful we are that happened, that we were able to go view that with my family and some of our friends. So again, that was wildly amazing. And I had noticed after we got done with the recording that I hadn't plugged in the microphone. We always do a mic check. So we'd plugged it in, recorded like a mic check, like 10-second clip. And then when we did the real thing, I had forgotten to plug it back in. So that video didn't actually have us on mic, but it was recorded over the laptop. And then just off my first instinct, I was like, oh, we should redo that one to get the better sound quality. And then he mentioned in the moment, like, we can't redo that. That was our initial reaction, and we got to post that even if the sound quality was not as great. You can still hear us and everything, and then as soon as he said that, I was like, such a great point. I wasn't even thinking about that. So we decided to just post it anyways. I think in like either our first or second episode, one of us had probably mentioned that we're here just giving it to you raw and uncut, just how we are, who we are. So we're not going to like alter our opinions or views in any way. And especially when it comes to like our first reaction on that, after he mentioned like we got to give it just like our raw, uncut version of what we actually felt and how we were thinking. Like I definitely agreed with that part. So we just posted that one. But and then in today's episode, we've had a few exciting things happen in the past few weeks. Some we're not at liberty to say, even though it's the Torch of Liberty, ironically. It does somewhat come in terms of an NDA, and that's not even a lie. So we aren't like even able to say much on it. But if you are really dedicated to making this nation better and truly patriotic, there will be a time to tell you. It can't be over videos like this. And that's all stuff that like there's other things from the start of this series, this show that we're doing. We thought like, okay, we're not going to spill everything out all at once. We're going to go through carefully and analyze. Like our first episode started on common and commercial law. And then we've gotten into other things, bureaucracy and jurisdiction. And these are all just the basic concepts that you have to understand when it comes to government in order to make an effective change and further progress with that. So like we've started out very basic and very general, but there will be more topics on specific things. One I was going to say is ecclesiastical law, trust law. I think in the video of common and commercial law, we at least mentioned it. That's something we're wanting to get into in one of these next videos. We will cover that probably alone as its own video for you guys to hear about and start learning about. I knew nothing of that coming into my studies on this, and that I think that's one of the next videos I would want to do. So we'll be getting that one out shortly here. I don't know if you got anything to say on that.
Yeah, so for today's episode, we got this awesome book, the Black's Law Dictionary. All the definitions that you need to know when it comes to legalese, common, everything. It lays out the definitions to what words really mean. Not only in the court of law, but in everyday life too. So we're going to cover that today.
And yeah, and we don't have all too much to present to you right now in this video, although I did want to read out the Black's Law's definition of common law, commercial law, color of law, and ecclesiastical law. that way, at least we have it on record of us getting into these subjects, because among those three, not color of law, because that's a umbrella term for everything we're going to get into, or not everything, but some of what we're going to get into. But like we said in the first episode on common and commercial law, there's three different types of law that like everything falls into in the eyes of law. So I'm going to go ahead and read you common law first. Or actually, should we start with commercial?
No matter.
Yeah, I'm right here on common law. So and this is the sixth edition of Black's Law Dictionary. And this is the one we were recommended to get. Although actually, before that, I'll just read the end of the preface on it, the preface. And that's just saying, just talking about this edition, which was released in 1990. But the last paragraph of that kind of is interesting. So it's at least worth a read before we get into the terms inside of it. It says here in a subtitle, a final word of caution. The language of the law is ever changing as the courts, Congress, state legislators, and administrative agencies continue to define, redefine, and expand legal words and terms. Furthermore, many legal terms are subject to variations from state to state, and again can differ under federal laws. Also, the type of legal issue, dispute, or transaction involved can affect a given definition usage. Accordingly, a legal dictionary should only be used as a starting point for definitions. Additional research should follow for state or federal variations, for further or later court interpretations, and for specific applications. Helpful sources for supplemental research are Words and Phrases and Westlaw. And that was from the publisher, July 1990. But so the first term we were wanting to read to you guys is common law. As distinguished from statutory law created by the enactment of legislators, the common law comprises the body of those principles and rules of action relating to the government and security of persons and property, which derive their authority solely from usages and customs of immemorial antiquity, or from the judgments and decrees of the courts recognizing, affirming, and enforcing such usages and customs. And in this sense, particularly the ancient unwritten law of England. In general, it is a body of law that develops and derives through judicial decisions as distinguished from legislative enactments. The common law is all the statutory and case law background of England and the American colonies before the American Revolution. That includes case People v. Remen 253 CA 2D 119, 61 Cal. I mean, if you're very interested, you can get your own and read all that case in here. It consists of those principles, usage, and rules of action applicable to government and security of persons and property, which do not rest for their authority upon any express and positive declaration of the will of the legislator. As distinguished from ecclesiastical law, it is the system of jurisprudence administered by the purely secular tribunals. In a broad sense, common law may designate all that part of the positive law, juristic theory, and ancient custom of any state or nation which is of general and universal application, thus marking off special or local rules or customs. And then it gets into a lot of different definitions that involve common law action, common law assignments, common law contempt, common law copyright. And And then another important point that I'm sure we'll get to at some point, common law courts in England, those administering the common law. There's actually different types of courts. I'm sure if you're vaguely familiar with the court system, there's like district courts, a bunch of different circuit courts, bunch of different like federal courts. Is very different if you're facing the feds in court versus the local authority. And then I think we'll read them out, and then at any point, if you want to bring up any opinion or thought that you have about it. But we'll go right to commercial law. A phrase used to designate the whole body of substantive jurisprudence. And it says, e.g., Uniform Commercial Code, Truth in Lending Act. Applicable to the rights, intercourse, and relations of persons engaged in commerce, trade, or mercantile pursuits. And it has a reference, see Uniform Commercial Code. So that's a big first distinction. I mean, we had a whole video where we were talking very general about it, but this is coming straight out of Black's Law. In common law, it brought up the protection of people and property, and then in this, it brings up persons engaged in commerce, trade, or mercantile pursuits. So this is where it comes in, the difference between if I were to hit him or us go rob a company. There's a very big difference in the eyes of the law on what would be the outcome, what can the judge, like, what would the verdict be, and everything like that. Because, like, say I hit him, and it's all good for whatever reason, and then the police are called because someone sees it happen, and then he says, no, we're like brothers, it's all good. There's no charges that he presses upon me. But if me and him go rob a bank, and then me and him both say, no, it's all good, we're like brothers, that would not be the same thing, and there would be charges pressed upon us. And also, in the Black's Law Dictionary, for all the definitions, a lot of these are derived from actual court cases. So after one definition, it'll tell you the case with a bunch of numbers and names. And so instead of just reading that all out, because you guys can go find it even online, you can find Black's Law Dictionary online. We're just going to say something like, go see that case, or you can see that in that case, or whatever, instead of reading that through all the numbers. Like, we'll just say, go see that case yourself. But we're just reading through the definitions, and they all end, for the most part, with case, if it was decided from a court case. So we're not going to read through all that, but we're reading straight out of the Black's Law Dictionary, so you can go double check us if you don't believe it's true. But and I think he was wanting to get into the color of law.
Yes. So in Black's Law Dictionary, the definition of the color of law: the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right, misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law and made possible only because wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state, is action taken under color of law, of state law. And then it goes through the case law, but there's a very important case in here that I'm going to read as well. So acts under color of any law of a state include not only acts done by state officials within the bounds or limits of their lawful authority, but also acts done without and beyond the bounds of their lawful authority, provided that in order for unlawful acts of an official to be done under color of any law, the unlawful acts must be done while such official is purporting or pertaining or pretending to act in the performance of his official duties. So yeah, that's the color of law definition in the Black's Law Dictionary, and it's really on point.
And yeah, so with that, like, you'll hear a lot of people when they talk about law, Hopefully they're bringing up common law a lot, but a lot of what we consider law is going to fall under commercial law, and that's color of law in most cases or situations. And another thing is statutory law, where those are the statutes and codes that are dictated. I'll actually go through and read out statutory law, because that as well is essentially commercial law. And as I find that, I'm going to let him take over for a sec.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you go into the world of legalese and fighting against, well, not fighting, but protecting yourself and guarding yourself versus the legal system. This book is really going to clear up a lot of definitions when it comes to those types of situations.
And yeah, it's one thing to use the dictionary to learn the terms that they're using, but it's a whole nother thing, like he just said, where God forbid any of us are called in and need to be in front of a court. But when you do, it is important to know exactly the process and the terms that they're using in order to like maximize your defense. Because if you know exactly what's going on, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in later videos, there are, I don't want to say easy ways, but once you understand their system, it is a much easier world to live in. With that too, this is a very personal thing to me, that, and it should be very personal and highly important to a lot of people, that the job of the courts is to enforce law. Like we all learned that growing up. Like legislative branch creates laws, executive and like has the chance to veto them and stuff, and make executive orders and everything. And then the judicial law or branch enforces them, and like, well, not enforces them, that's executive, but decides whether it's right or wrong according to the Constitution. So you have the creation, enforcement, and then somebody whose job it is to decide whether that is right or wrong. And for me, that is a very important role to play, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. It should be a highly prestigious role in our society to be the ones deciding, hey, you can't do that, or hey, you're all right to do that, even though this group of people don't want you to, or whatnot, anything like that. And with that, in the world of the judicial system, all they're doing is using words and reading what has been written. And it's not a far leap to see a world like George Orwell's 1984, where you're redefining words and changing characteristically people's psychology in order to meet your own desires and reach your own ends. So it's like, I don't know, I find it very crucial and important that that system is correct and right and just. They're using words, and words are very, very important. So I just like it. I don't think it can be overstated how important that ought to be for all of us. Like, I don't know. I find it highly valuable and highly important to me. And if you actually care about your own life, your friends' lives, your parents' lives, you should really care about how they operate, the words they're using, and how they treat us. And also, I don't want to, like, that little spiel, like, with how they treat us. Like, I don't want to make it seem like it's super one side, like two-sided, because we're all of mankind, and we got to come together. Like, the division is not the solution. But I did find statutory law. That body of law created by acts of the legislature, in contrast to constitutional law and law generated by decisions of courts and administrative bodies. And again, we're just going through all these to provide a general, like just instant definition from Black's Law, for you guys to hear and see that it's not just as cut and dry as there is the law, like, and that's all it is. Like, there are different types of law, and they're weighted differently. The Bill of Rights being the absolute pinnacle, besides the natural rights that they are protecting, the human rights that those laws are protecting. Like, as far as laws go, those are the highest. But as far as the rights, which I guess, like, people say laws, or the laws of nature and stuff, and that's where we could get into a very philosophical debate between what is a right and what is law. But in a general sense, like, in terms of written human law, not natural rights, which law protects. But I'm sure you get what I'm saying. And that's actually a perfect time to go into ecclesiastical law. And that's something that we'll spend a whole video getting into. And it involves trusts and trust law. And I'm excited to bring that to the table, because that's something we've learned a lot more about just in the past few weeks, or past month or so. And that's where our head's going at this point. So we'll definitely be bringing you a video on all that. But right here, ecclesiastical law, the body of jurisprudence administered by the ecclesiastical courts of England, derived in large measure from the canon and civil law. As now restricted, it applies mainly to the affairs and the doctrine, discipline, and worship of the established church. So yeah, and then I'll go back just one page, because, and sorry if I butchered this word, but ecclesia, Latin, an assembly, a Christian assembly, a church, a place of religious worship. In the law, generally the word is used to denote a place of religious worship and sometimes a parsonage. And that's where it goes back to the creation of our law being highly derived, if not solely derived, but I would say highly derived, off of the Bible. God gives us rights, and like the founders' profound belief in a creator. It's in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence that they bring up their belief in that it's unalienable rights that we have that cannot be separated or taken away from us. And I'm sure we'll have videos getting into all that as a subject matter, because that is kind of where that's our start point. And every act of legislation, whether it's the COVID lockdowns, whatever it may be, maybe you're mad about parking tickets or speeding traffic tickets, like speeding and stuff, whatever it may be, it all goes back to what are our rights and what do they have the authority to do. So that's where we'll be at with a lot of these videos.
I'm actually curious before we close out if there's a definition for trust law specifically.
Yeah.
Piqued my interest since I got the book in hand, you know. Let's see here.
That's where every time looking through a dictionary, you got to kind of recite the alphabet just a little bit.
Right. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There we go. We got trust right here.
And I know there definitely will be a definition for trust, but I'm actually interested to see if there's one for
trust
law.
The definition for trust is super extensive.
Oh, yeah.
We'll definitely get into that in another episode. That's a little too long for right now. It's like 3-4 pages. Crazy. All right, here we go. Trust. Actually, I do not see it in here.
Yeah.
But the definition of trust is in here, and I'm actually curious of what Black's Law Dictionary has.
I was going to cover so many different things.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with some of these definitions. It'll give the basic definition of trust, as in I trust my friends. So whatever its definition of that is, but then it'll also get into like how it's treated under law. So that's just what we were bringing to you, though. Big book, lot of words, important content in terms of our judicial system, which some could argue is a major backbone of the entire government. So that's where we'll leave you at for now. We'll definitely be getting back into, I'm sure we'll cover more of the color of law, ecclesiastical law, trust law, the levels at which they can hit you with different verdicts, everything like that. Because if anything, we want this community to be about like just open learning, discussion, about just how the law operates and what we can do about it. And it will take a bit of explaining and learning to get into, okay, what is it we're even talking about? Then we'll get into what are ways we can go about making an actual tangible change.
This is the Torch of Liberty. We will restore the public together. Peace, love, and truth to everyone out there. We love you. Have a good night.